Hello and welcome to episode 23 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is January 23rd, 2017. I'm Rollo McFlugel and with me is Slappy Jones 2 and we are both of McFlugel.com. Show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/23 where you will find some links to subscribe and find other stuff we do and also see a way that we can maybe send Bill Kristol on an Iraqi vacation. So Donald Trump was inaugurated president last week, and so we wanted to each week count how many people that he has expelled from the country. So in this first week is with President Trump, we have a total count of 0. So we'll update that number next week. See how I guess he's just kind of getting in there and feeling his way around. Hasn't had much time to find all the people he doesn't like that he's going to kick out. So we'll give him some time. I'm sure that number will be, in the hundreds of thousands next week. So with that, I'll pass it over to Slappy, and he will introduce our topic for tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Rollo, and thank you, everyone, for joining. Today we're going to talk a little bit about, we'll call it the is-all fallacy or the status quo. We hear from people from time to time. Like I said, we direct this podcast toward people who are not libertarian, who are trying to learn. So I know many of our listeners are anarchists or libertarian, but what we hear a lot, and I'm sure you do too, is, well, this all sounds good, this stateless stuff, it sounds great, but let's be honest, the state's not going anywhere. It's been around forever. It's going to be around forever. Why do you waste your time doing this? If nothing's going to change, and that's always the way it's been. So, Rollo, what do you say to that when you get those kind of questions?
Oh, I thought the topic was going to be about how many people were at the inauguration for Trump.
Oh, right. That was the big news. That was the big, I've read next week's topic. I apologize. So, You saw the pictures. No, just kidding.
No, it's something that we get all the time, and it's something that, because the state has been around since basically the beginning of time minus a few years, I guess, or as long as people have been around and organizing themselves. So it is something that we have to fight, and it's why should we change? It's like anything else. If the vast majority of the world believes something, it doesn't necessarily mean they're right, but it kind of puts the burden of proof on you to show why everyone's wrong, as opposed to why people should just take your opinion because you're 1 out of 100 people saying something.
Right. I mean, if you know nothing on a topic and 100 people tell you something about a topic, a reasonable person is going to believe that. That's social proof. I mean, it's not illogical to believe something that everyone is telling you.
Exactly. But at the same time, we also know that innovation happens not because everyone just kind of decides that, hey, let's try this new thing. And innovation ideas are normally met with people saying no to them and resisting them. People typically don't like change. And an example I'll use of this is in the workplace. And I actually read a book a while ago. It's a very good book by Scott Berkun called The Myths of Innovation, talking about how changes throughout history, mostly in the business world, and different products have how that all actually came to be. It's not these wonderful stories about an apple falling on Isaac Newton's head. That's not how he discovered gravity. It's a cute little story.
I thought he invented gravity.
Oh yeah, that's true. It wasn't around before Isaac Newton came around. Like how Ben Franklin invented electricity.
Right.
But there's these cute little stories of how these things came to be, and we come to accept them as truth as opposed to just a way of making a point. And so the point of that book was to show how change really happened, and it's normally met with a lot of resistance. And so when you look at that and you take it into your own life and your own workplace, and how it's very difficult to make change, and you're normally met with maybe your manager, your coworker saying, well, that's not the way we do things here, and just step in line with everyone else and conform to how we do things because that's the way it runs. And if it If that's not the way it ran, then we wouldn't be where we were today. But if you always take that approach on something, you're never going to change. You're never going to improve. And innovation is ways of improving. And so one of the ways I kind of address statelessness and libertarianism is that it's an innovation for society. That, let's look for ways to improve society. And if that means removing a lot of the controls of the state and eventually eliminating it, why not pursue that?
Yeah, actually, exactly what you're saying reminds me of a commercial that's been on TV with Chick-fil-A serving breakfast, where it's Alexander Graham Bell calls his buddy and says, "Remember when I told you I was going to invent the telephone? You called me crazy. And then remember I said I was going to have chicken for breakfast and you called me crazy. Well, you're 0 for 2. So, it kind of illustrates that point. Everyone was saying this guy was crazy for saying he's going to do whatever he did with the telephone. I know it's debatable whether he invented it, but that's not what the commercial says. So we'll go with it.
Right.
But really, if we have these ideas and they make sense, just because everyone says we're wrong doesn't mean we're wrong.
Right. And also that people always say, well, we're not doing government the right way. We got to have more government. Government's got to change the way it is, whether it's more local, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I kind of think government's kind of had its chance. And it hasn't produced what it's supposed to produce. And, the world's getting better despite what the government does and the state does and its control over people and everything. So,
well, to that, I think people would actually, I know I get this all the time, like, well, our lives are better today than they were 100 years ago and 150 years ago, and we've had government the whole time, and they thank government for that.
Right.
So some people would argue that government is working very well. The people will say that, though. Oh, I agree. Whenever you talk about almost always agree that X politician is corrupt. This guy's a scumbag. He's a fraud. He's a fake. He's just out for your money. He's a lobbyist. Everyone always agrees. It doesn't matter what party they're from. I rarely hear someone. People will say like, yeah, well, Hillary's corrupt, but Donald Trump is way worse, or vice versa. But no, rarely do I hear someone say this politician is just the greatest thing in the world. So it's kind of impressive, I'd say, the power of the state, to where you have all these people running things and everyone pretty much thinks they're corrupt or don't care about them or whatever, yet still back them and still get upset over not standing for a national anthem, or even having the idea that maybe we don't need them is offensive to some people.
Right, because that's the paradigm that we're supposed to think it, and is that government is, it's there, it always will be, and you can't live without it. So we're told we got to live with it, and we take the good and the bad with it. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right, and you hear, like with this big women's march this weekend, on one of the websites, one of the groups organizing it, I think I read the word non-violence about 9 times in their points. We want to non-violently make our voices heard, and non-violent this, non-violent that. But ironically, their solution always has to do with more government.
Right.
So you got to take them, at least I take them, as being sincere. People are traveling a long way to do this march, but they don't even see that what they're arguing for is actually a lot more violence, or it doesn't resonate with them. So the government, it does a phenomenal job. We always talk about a phenomenal job in doing what they're designed to do. That is, we talk about how if anyone else stole your money, it would clearly be a crime. But when the government does it, it's tax. And it's patriotic to pay it, and it's your duty to pay it. And if you don't like it, you can vote it. Vote someone else in.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird. Because, it's a cognitive dissonance.
Clearly.
And we're, like, it's funny because no one likes when you bring up the idea of paying taxes, everyone says, oh, it's terrible. I wish I didn't have to do it. You get your every once in a while, someone say, oh, I like paying taxes. That's weird. I said that as a kid before I started paying taxes. I thought taxes were very patriotic, and why wouldn't you want to pay taxes? And then I got my first paycheck and said, "Where did all the money go?"
But even just the idea of democracy is sacred to a lot of people. They don't even question it.
Right.
Like, the reason I'm marching is because I want to take part in the democratic process and making my voice heard. And why? So you can force it on everyone else?
Yeah, but it's I guess because it's the status. They don't even think about it that
They
way.
don't even consider it. They think it's legitimate. And so that's the kind of what I'm trying to say is that Rollo and I and all our other ANCAPs or anarchists or libertarians out there are trying to get you to think deeper about these things. And if we get enough people, we don't need the entire country to think this way. We just need a good amount.
Right. And that's why I think it's frustrating sometimes for people when I talk to them, because I don't think at all in that paradigm anymore. That it's actually very foreign to me and I'm not trying to be condescending towards these people or act like they're stupid or unintelligent, because I used to think that way. But it's just these ideas are so foreign to me now because I've opened up how I think about the state and relationships with other people and interactions. And the idea of just forcing your views on someone else just because that's the way we do it.
It just seems absurd now. Like
Right.
I agree with what Rollo's saying. We don't even think that way. It's hard to even come up with examples for counterpoints at this point because I don't think that way. And it's been so long since I have thought that way.
And I think it's frustrating when you're talking to people is that when you're talking about this kind of stuff, you're just not even hitting anything that's in their head. So I don't know. You got to take a step back when talking about this stuff and remember that not everyone's where you might be. So you got to find that trigger point in them that gets them to maybe see the way that you do.
And just another thing on this, I mean, one thing we can guarantee is the state will never go away if we don't talk about abolishing it. So the first thing we have to do is get as many people to see. I don't even necessarily try to convince people to agree with me. Just argue my points. And if you like it and it sounds good to you, then you're on board. That's how it happened with me. Nobody forced me to think this way or shoved it down my throat or whatever. You just kind of learn more and it starts to make sense. And it's consistent and it's freeing and it makes you feel really good to know you're consistent in your beliefs. And yeah, I mean, if we could spread that message, if it makes sense to a lot of people, now we have something.
Right. And even if it doesn't ever make the state go away, I kind of want to be on the right side of things. Do we actually think that, for example, murder is going to go away? But it doesn't mean we should say like, well, it's never going away. So do we really want to say it shouldn't have happened? That's absurd.
What about something like slavery? I mean, when did that really first start getting questioned as being immoral or unethical? I don't know the answer, but I can imagine if we were sitting around in the 1400s talking about, we think slavery is just kind of not right. I think it's wrong. A counterpoint that would be the same as the counterpoint we're getting today is, yeah, but I agree with you that kind of makes sense, but slavery's been around forever. There's like millions of slaves out there, and all these slave owners aren't going to give them up. So, why worry about it?
Or someone might say, however many years ago, what do you mean women are equal to men? That's never been the case before. Why even bring that up? That's crazy talk.
It makes sense, but nobody believes it. No one's going to go with it. So it's got to start somewhere, and they're good ideas. They make sense. We don't need to rely on these people.
Right. So that's, if you find yourself that your reaction to something or your defense of something is that's the way we've always done it,
you should probably rethink it.
Right. It doesn't mean you're wrong.
No, but you should rethink it.
Right. It just means
It
just means you don't have a good reason to think that. If that's the only reason, that's what I was told. Basically, by saying that you agree with something because that's the way it's always been done means that you're admitting that you were just told what to think or do, and you didn't question it. You just went along with it. If it's something that you say, hey, I thought about this, and I actually agree with it for reasons 1, 2, and 3. All right, so be it. We can still talk about it, but at least you've thought about it and pass it through your own filters to see if it actually makes sense to you.
Yeah. So anyway, that's not very, I will say it gets frustrating at times when you feel like you're talking a good, talking up your game, your big philosophy, and people are agreeing with you and getting it. And then the only counterpoint they have is, but we've always had the state and we always will. Well, that's kind of a depressing way to look at it, but at least whoever's saying that, that's what they're resorting to. They got past the roads, they got past defense or offense or whatever other arguments they always make, and they're now up to the point, well, we can't take it down, so what do? Well, just keep living your life and lower your government footprint as much as possible and talk to people, and 20, 30 years, who knows what it'll be.
Right.
So anyway, do you have a free market story for this week?
I do, and it's not necessarily something that's very specific, but as I might have mentioned before, and I don't mean to always bring it up, but I've been putting in a lot of hours at work for the past month or so, and so I get home around 7 o'clock, 7:30 each night. I don't have the time that I normally would to do normal things that a adult would do, like go to the store for a lot of things. I run out of something or I need something. Even, I do have some time available, but by the time I'm getting home from work, the last thing I want to do is go out in the store. But what I can do is at any time of the day, especially since I have a smartphone so I'm basically always connected to the internet, is I can go to a place like Amazon.com and buy basically whatever I want. So that is such a huge convenience, and it's saved me time. It's saved me aggravation. It's allowed me to get a few more minutes of sleep sometimes, because I can do whatever I got to do when I get home and not have to worry about going to the store. It's something we take for granted, but it's absolutely incredible. And that wasn't even around a few years ago. It was before the .com boom that happened. And even after that, internet shopping wasn't that popular until a few years ago. But man, you go online and you can buy just about anything you want and get it shipped to your house in a day or two. And so if you've got the Amazon Prime thing, it's for free after you pay a subscription. But it's
pretty impressive.
Yeah.
If you talk to someone from not that long ago, really in college, I graduated college 11 years ago now. You could order stuff online. We used eBay, but I don't think anyone thought they would do grocery shopping online.
Right. I haven't done that yet.
But people do.
I know.
It's pretty incredible, really. And 20 years, you look at the 90s, I remember that was just a whole nother time period. No cell phones. I don't even know the first time I purchased something online, but it definitely wasn't in the 1990s.
Right. It was probably a book, because I remember Amazon, that's
bookstore.
Yeah. But it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So I don't know. I think that about wraps it up. Remember to check out mcflugel.com/23 for the show notes page, where you can find links to subscribe to the podcast on either iTunes or Stitcher. Also subscribe to our email list so you can be up to date on everything we post. And also like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We like conversation, and we like being questioned on stuff.
Absolutely.
So with that, we'll let you go for tonight, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, have a good week. Peace.